The British Prime Minister pre-election claimed that the UK economy is now going gangbusters is undermined today by a report which argues that growth since 2010 has been unspectacular and has been the result of a rising population caused principally by high levels of immigration. The study, live in the slow lane from the politically independent Resolution Foundation, will add to the consensus among economists and academics that the fundamental economic problems and challenges facing this country are being dodged by the parties during the general election campaign. So, average or every UK citizen, listen to what these people are saying. These institutes are now saying that your politicians are dodging the real factors that are contributing to your problem. I will read it again because from 4th of July, yes, I think 4th of July, they will start the debate in the UK. An average UK citizen need to get acquainted, educate themselves, get enough information, because you need to question these politicians. You need to ask them those questions that put them in a tight corner. Those questions that are uncomfortable for them to answer. Because that is when you will test their real character. If they are just preaching or they will walk their talk when they enter there. The study, live in the slow lane from the political independent Resolution Foundation, will add to the consensus among economics and academics that the fundamental economic problems and challenges facing this country, UK, United Kingdom, are being dodged by the parties during the general election campaign. Both Labour and Tories have vowed to bring down immigration if they form the next government, while saying little on how they will increase productivity through higher investment to stimulate real long-term growth. The report said that population growth averaged 0.7% a year in the UK since 2010, the equivalent of 6 million people. So their population grew 6 million people. So you can imagine, and has been in the prime driver of what GDP growth that has been. 3/4 of this total population growth was the result of migration. Looking at the GDP per capita, which accounts for population growth, the UK's overall and relative performance is far worse. The foundation says GDP per capita has grown by a mere 4.3% over the past 16 years, compared to 46% in the years prior. So that is to say that in the last 16 years, their GDP per capita only grew 4.3% compared to 17 years ago, in which it was at 46%. You can see the margin. That is about the difference of 42.7%. The report says that growing population has masked the UK's atrocious record on productivity, output per worker, which grew by just 0.6% a year in the 2010s. Since 2008 financial crisis, productivity growth has been the slowest for 2 centuries. Tory peer David Willett, president of the Resolution Foundation, said, "Our report shows that the crude figures on GDP growth exaggerate our performance because the population has been going up. The growth of GDP per head is far too low. We have got to boost investment to get the economy growing, and the party manifestos have to recognize how serious these problems is and show how to tackle it." You see, this Resolution Foundation is now making it clear that the political parties have to reflect in their manifestos how serious and critical these problems are, acknowledging these problems, what are the real problems, and equally spelling out how they intend to tackle it. The campaigns so far haven't really tackled this challenge, you see, because the politicians everywhere now are just blowing the trumpet of migration, putting it that is the migration that is their problem, but forgetting that in a long run, migration might equally be a solution to some of their problems today because of their aging population, because of their labor shortages they are having. So you see, at the end of the day, they cannot do without migration. Instead of addressing these issues, other issues that are more higher than this migration issue that is very easy. You know, the politicians, they always look for that which the average citizens want to hear. They will just be blowing that trumpet, making it look like is the migrants that are the problem. Meanwhile, the migrants are not the one making the policies in your country. The migrants are not the ones sitting in the House of Commons. The migrants are not the ones going to Downing Street. The migrants are not the ones sitting in the House of Lords. But it's very easy to put the problem on other people, which is immature, which is irresponsibility. So it makes them to feel better. It makes them to sing that tone which the people want to hear, for them to get enough votes to remain relevant, for them to remain in power. Why the real problems keep getting worse because the politicians refuse to address it. Looking ahead, the report says that the employment boom of the 2010s is unlikely to be repeated. Migration levels are expected to fall from 685,000 in 2023 to around 350,000 annually over the next 5 years. While an unhealthy population and the fact that much of the UK's large baby boomer cohort will be retiring will put further downward pressure on future growth of the workforce. So you see, that is the aging population I'm talking about. So reducing their migration numbers from 685,000 to 350, that means they are cutting it by 330,000 in the next 5 years. At the end of the day, is going to have a serious impact in their population, whether they admit it or not. And it is equally going to have a stronger impact in their aging populations, in the labor shortages they are having. And these are issues that the politicians don't want to address. And these are the uncomfortable questions the public need to be asking the population, the politicians. The housing crisis, increment of salaries every year, because every year cost of living is getting higher. How do they intend to increase the salary, to pass policies that will make the companies, private companies, countries' companies, private individuals, businesses, to be increasing salary every year? These are the questions that the public need to be asking these politicians. How do they intend to address this housing crisis? How do they intend to build affordable housing schemes, social housing schemes for the ones that can't afford to pay the housing themselves or that have lesser income? Research director at the Resolution Foundation said the extra 6 million people in the Britain have certainly made the economy bigger, but have done little for the GDP per capita. The UK's record on productivity, which is what really matters for the living standards, is exceptionally bad. Since 2019, the UK has strengthened its position as the world's second biggest exporter of services after the US, the report says. But far less welcome has been its weak performance on goods trade, with 57% of manufacturing businesses still wrestling with the additional paperwork, customs duties, border checks, which have increased exporting challenge post-Brexit. So If the UK people like, let them ask their politicians the uncomfortable questions. If they like, they should not.